Welcome to Supernatural Insight. I'm Lauren. This is my second episode, and if you have not listened to the first one, I would very much encourage you to listen to the first one, the Israelites and the Ancient Near East Worldview. This is the second one, and there's a third one, Yahweh and His Divine Assembly. These are to be listened to in sequence. Today's subject is the origins of Yahwism, as we explore Yahweh and El, Yahweh the God of the Israelites, and El the supreme God of the Canaanites. A significant discovery, an archaeological discovery in Syria, has brought to light many ancient temple tablets of the Canaanite religion. This is a recap from the episode 1 to set the platform for this presentation. This forgotten Canaanite city of Ugarit was discovered in 1928. A farmer was plowing his field and made this discovery. It turned out to be an ancient seaport that was at its political, religious, and economic greatness around the 12th century BC. The tablets revealed an old Canaanite mythology naming 3 prominent deities: El, the supreme deity; Asherah, the lord of the sea; and Baal, the Lord of the heavens. Now, they are a divine family, one big family. El and his consort Asherah, with 70 divine sons. And there are daughters, goddesses as well. Baal, a god worshipped in many ancient Middle Eastern communities, especially among the Canaanites, who apparently considered him a fertility deity and one of the most important gods in the pantheon. As such, Baal designated the universal god of fertility, and in that capacity, his title was Prince, Lord of the Earth. He was also called the Lord of Rain and Dew, the 2 forms of moisture that were indispensable for fertile soil in Canaan. In Ugaritic and Hebrew, Baal's epithet as the storm god was "he who rides on the clouds." In Phoenician, he was called Baal Shaman, Lord of the heavens. Interesting. Then there's Asherah, the ancient West Semitic goddess, consort of the supreme God. Her principal epithet was "she who walks on the sea." According to the text from Ugarit, Asherah's consort was El, and by him she was the mother of 70 gods. As mother goddess, she was widely worshipped throughout Syria and Palestine, although she was frequently paired with Baal, who often took the place of El as Baal's consort. Asherah was usually given the name Baalat. Inscriptions from 2 locations in southern Palestine seem to indicate that she was also worshipped as the consort of Yahweh. Seem is an important word there. Seem to indicate. The relationship between the God of Israel, Elohim, and the Canaanite god El is widely contested among scholars, so there's quite some debate and a lot of scholarly works are in the makings because of this issue. While there's wide support among them suggesting that Yahweh developed from the El figure, others contend for the Kenite position. The Kenite propose explanation acknowledge similar parallels. Yes, there are similar traits and similar characteristics and titles and attributes between them. However, there is no clear evidence to say that Yahweh and El are the same God, or that Yahweh split off from El figure. The Kenite position proposes a strong theory of Yahweh's geographical connection with the south. There are biblical texts describing Yahweh's march from the south, as well as Egyptian records describing Yahweh to Seir and Edom contending for early knowledge of Yahweh in these regions. Now, some of the most ancient texts of the Hebrew Bible and archaic poetry includes Exodus 15, Judges 5, Deuteronomy 33, Habakkuk 3, and Psalm 68, which provides clarity about early worship of God of Israel. And what's so revealing and what's so interesting is that it places the origin of Yahweh in Teman, the southland, or from Edom, the country southeast of Judah, or from Sinai. Now, based on this observation and others, some scholars long ago concluded the worship of Yahweh, the God of Israel, had its origin south and east of Israel and Judah, in the region which today includes the northern part of Saudi Arabia, southern Jordan, and Israel. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Kenites were a nomadic tribe in the ancient Levant. The Kenites were coppersmiths and metal workers. They played an important role in the history of ancient Israel. Now, one of the most recognized Kenite is Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, who was a priest and shepherd in the land of Midian. According to the Kenite hypothesis, Yahweh was historically a Midian deity, and the association of Moses' father-in-law with Midian reflects the historical adoption of the Midianite cult by the Hebrews. Moses apparently identified with Jethro's concept of God, Yahweh, with the Israelites' God, El Shaddai. In the context, or in the Exodus story, Moses flees from Egypt into the wilderness and has his encounter with Yahweh. Now, this encounter takes place in the region referred to above. The first encounter between Yahweh and the Israelites was in Midian. Midian being the name used in the Exodus story for the same region. Jethro at one point says that Yahweh is the greatest of all gods. Exodus 18 and verse 11. Simply put, Yahweh from the south probably did not originate from a Canaanite cult figure, El, but it's possible El might have been an epithet or a cultic name of Yahweh. It should also be kept in mind that the role of El as a Canaanite high god became largely insignificant at the beginning of the Iron Age, which is 1200 to 1000 BC. Now, this diminished role probably explains why there are no traces in the Hebrew Bible of polemics against El, but there are plenty of polemics against Baal, and there's plenty of polemics against Asherah, but not El, which tells us a lot. Yahweh and Atharat. Atharat, known in the Hebrew Bible as Asherah. Atharat is an ancient West Semitic goddess who, in the earliest beginnings, is identified as consort of the supreme god, the queen of the Sumerian god, Anu. She also appears in Ugaritic texts as Atharat, the consort of El, and by him she was the mother of 70 sons, divine sons. 70 is a well-known conventional number for a generally large family group. So hence the 70 sons designate not the divine council as a whole. Now this council will be dealt with in the next episode, so I encourage you to come back to listen to the next episode. But its leading members. So as Mother Goddess, she was widely worshipped throughout Syria and Palestine. She was frequently paired with Baal, who often took the place of Al. Asherah is the goddess of fertility and renewal in the cycle of life, and was also known as she who walked the sea. She was often featured with a lion or ibex on either side of her. Asherah was a beloved household goddess to Canaanites, and may I say Israelites as well, and Phoenicians, who believed to bring special blessings to families and help people accomplish their goals. Her status were found under most trees. Some figures were carved from living trees or constructed as pillars beside roadside altars, and many terracotta figures of goddesses, though they're not identified or clearly identified as Asherah, has been unearthed around Jerusalem, with more being uncovered every year. But who was Asherah, known in the Hebrew Bible as Asherah to the ancient Israelites? Well, there is much debate swirling in the academic world in an attempt to answer this question. Many scholars believe that Asherah in the Jerusalem temple was none other than the symbol of the goddess, either a tree or a wooden pole, and the image was hers, of course, 2 Kings 21:7. John Day, an Oxford scholar, says, quote, "Until the discovery of the Ugaritic texts, it was common not to accept her existence, but since the discovery of the text, no one can deny that there was a Canaanite goddess, Asherah. It is generally accepted that this image goddess appears a number of times in the Old Testament. Deuteronomy 16:21 and 22, you shall not plant any wooden thing as an Asherah beside the altar of the Lord your God, which you shall make, and you shall not set up a pillar which the Lord your God hates." So it's obvious that the prophets railed against Asherah and her presence. Deo concludes his observation saying, "It seems, therefore, that these texts reflect a religious syncretism in which Asherah was closely related to Yahweh, presumably as his consort. So the presence of the symbol of the goddess Asherah next to Yahweh's altar must or most naturally suggest that she was regarded in the circle of those who hold to syncretism as Yahweh's consort." So says they. Although there is some debate among the type of cult object mentioned in the Old Testament, the evidence is strong that the Asherah in the Hebrew Bible was a wooden pole symbolizing the goddess Asherah. Well, Exodus 34:13 says, "But you shall tear down and destroy their altars, and smash in pieces their pillars, and cut down their Asherim." Asherim is a symbol of the mother goddess Asherah, usually a tree or a pole dedicated to her and placed near her many shrines. Deuteronomy 7 and 5, Deuteronomy 12:3, Deuteronomy 16 and 21. "But this is how you shall deal with them. You shall tear down the altars, and smash to pieces their sacred pillars, and cut down their Asherim, and burn their carved or sculpted images in the fire." Judges 6:25, 28 and 30. And tear down the altar of Baal that belongs to your father, and cut down the Asherah that is besides it. 1 Kings 14 and 23. For they also built for themselves high places to worship idols and sacred pillars and Asherim for the goddess Asherah. These were on every high hill and under every luxuriant tree. 1 Kings 14:23. Now, many scholars in the world of academia contend that Asherah was a goddess worshipped in the Jerusalem temple devoted to Yahweh and was therefore regarded as his consort. And you can find books on this, scholarly books by William Deaver and others. They often cite archaeological evidence. Well, William Deaver is an archaeologist, a renowned archaeologist, a very influential individual. And they cite evidence discovered in the West Bank in the territory of biblical kingdom Judah, the 8th century inscription that mentions Yahweh and his Asherah. The tombs were investigated by the historian and archaeologist William G. Deaver. He argues that unless the goddess Asherah herself had been a living, potent deity and had been widely venerated as a symbol like a tree or a wooden pole, would have been meaningless, indeed a farce, if it or she were powerless. Why does she continue to appear with Yahweh? But not all scholars hold to this view. Mark S. Smith, a Princeton historian, a brilliant historian, is unwilling to acknowledge Asherah's full-fledged goddess role in the period of the monarchy in Israel. He is willing to accept that Asherah played a role in various functions in the cult of Yahweh. For Smith, the evidence is just not there. No doubt this debate will continue for some time to come. It's my view that it will zigzag as new archaeological evidence are found in ancient Israel or in Israel's ancient archaeological sites, which will add new understanding to the biblical texts. Now let's look at Yahweh and Baal, or Baal Hadad. Let's look for a moment at the Baal cycle in the Ugaritic cycle of stories about the Canaanite god Baal, a storm god associated with fertility. The Baal cycle series are summarized like this. Yam, the god, wants to rule over the other gods. Now this is one family. Keep in mind they are siblings. Yam wants to rule over the other gods and be the most powerful god of all in the Baal story or cycle. Baal opposes Yam and slays him. Baal, with the help of Anath, goddess, and Atharat, persuades El to allow him a palace. Now, Baal commissions an individual to build him a palace. Kings of the gods and rulers of the world seek to subjugate Mot. Mot kills Baal. Anath brutally kills Mot, grinds him up, and scatters his ashes. Baal returns to Mount Saphon. Mot, having recovered from being ground up and scattered, he challenges Baal. Baal refuses, but Mot submits. Now, in the Ugaritic text, Baal is the one who rides the clouds. Baal is associated with lightning, storms, winds, thunder, rain, fire, arrows, and a chariot in the skies, or in the clouds. Baal, as a storm god, is represented with a thunderbolt and a spear touching the ground with streaks of lightning at its other end. The description became an official title of Baal, recognized throughout the entire ancient Near Eastern world as a deity of great veneration. To ancient people, the one who rides the clouds was a deity whose status was unquestioned. The leaders, scribes, and prophets of the Bible was quite familiar with Baal as a main source of threat and a main source of anxiety. There are many polemics against Baal in an effort to make the point that Yahweh, the God of Israel, deserves worship instead of Baal. Now, the title of Baal as Cloud Rider is transferred to Yahweh. In the book of Deuteronomy it says, Israel, no other God is like ours. The clouds are his chariots, as he rides across the skies to come and help us. Deuteronomy chapter 33 and 26. The book of Psalms has similar references as well. Psalm 68 Psalm 68, 32 to 33, 33. The book of Psalms has a reference that says, praise the one who rides across the skies. Psalm 104, 1 to 4. Bless Yahweh, O my soul, who makes clouds his chariots, or his chariot. And then Isaiah 19 and 1. Look, Yahweh is riding on a swift cloud and is coming to Egypt. Now, isn't that interesting? I think it's interesting. Let's look at Yam. Yam, the god of the sea in the Canaanite pantheon. Yam takes the role of adversary of Baal in the Ugaritic Baal cycle. He is also one of Elohim's and son of Al. Yam is one name of the god of river and sea. His palace is in the depths of the ocean. Yam is the deity of chaos, primordial chaos, and presents the power of the sea. The god cast out Yam from the heavenly mountain Saphon. Yam is identified in the biblical text as the sea monster, Leviathan. Yes, he's the sea monster, Leviathan. You'll find this description in the Hebrew Bible, in the Old Testament. The sea monster, Leviathan. Mot was the Canaanite, the ancient Canaanite god of death and the underworld. Let's look at Mot. He is the son of El. He was worshipped by Canaanites and Phoenicians, and according to the Ugaritic text, Baal is slain by Mot in battle. Anat, a powerful goddess of war, fertility, honored as a protector, agent of vengeance, and bearer of life, comes upon Mot, takes hold of him, splitting him with a blade, winnowing him in a sieve, burning him in a fire, and grinding him under a millstone, and throwing what remains of him over a field for birds to devour. The story goes, Al, Baal's father, dreams that Baal is alive and sends Shapaz to bring him back to life, because the land has become dry. After 7 years, Mot, who is the death god, returns, seeking revenge, or seeking vengeance. A single combat between the two breaks out, and Mot is warned that his own father will turn against him and overturn his throne if he continues in the conflict. Mot conceded, and the conflict ends. Now, it's important to compare Ugaritic traditions and the comparable material in the Bible related to the cosmic enemies. Baal confronts four enemies with basically the same names in the Ugaritic material and Hebrew, or in the Yahweh and Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible. Now, C with the capital S. C is the Hebrew Yam. In the Ugaritic, it simply goes like YM. The biblical Leviathan is also a reference to a sea monster. Then we have the Ugaritic and the biblical term for it as well as Tannin. This is also identified as a sea monster or sea monster. Then we have the biblical Mawet. Mawet and Ugaritic Mot, both meaning death. Now let's look at Israel's enemies. This is interesting, so if you please just stay alert on this one. And just as these cosmic enemies are mentioned as Baals or Anet's old enemies, they are known in the Israelite tradition as enemies of Yahweh, the warrior god. Now, three of these foes show up in Psalm 74, 12 to 17. Now listen. Our God, it says, and King, you have ruled since ancient times. You have won victories everywhere on earth. By your power you made a path through the sea, and you smashed the heads of sea monsters. You smashed the heads of the monster Leviathan, then fed him to wild creatures in the desert. You opened the ground for streams and springs, and dried up mighty rivers. You ruled the day and night, and you put the moon and the sun in place. You made summer and winter and gave them to earth. Now, here in the Psalms, the cosmic enemy's defeat serves as a prelude to creation. In comparison, Isaiah 27:1 shows Leviathan its defeat is a sign of the end times, according to Isaiah 27:1. Isaiah 25 and verse 8 also declares a reversal of the power of the cosmic enemy, death. It depicts God. It shows God as swallowing of death, which reverses the comparable image of death demanding to swallow Baal in the Ugaritic narration. Now, the book of Job shows these cosmic enemies both as human foes and divine playthings. Yes, divine playthings. They're toys. Job himself expresses the understanding of these forces as hostile powers when he complains against God. Quote, he says, "Am I sea? Or am I a sea monster? Tannin. Is that why you imprison me?" Job 7 and 12. Yet, the narrative of Job downplays these enemies by reducing them as pits, playthings for divine pleasure, not as an enemy, but as a newborn baby. Job 38, just read it, Job 38 verses 8 to 11. The Leviathan is the sea monster caught by Yahweh's fishhook, drawn by a rope and nose ring. And God asked Job, "Will you play with him like a bird?" Job 40 and 29. Now, Psalm 104 and 26 similarly identifies this figure as a creature made for play. Leviathan, whom you formed to sport with. So it's a plaything, a sport thing, like a baby or biblical scribes do not acknowledge their foes with the status of gods or divine things. Even though there was a time in Israel or among the ancient Israelites who may have regarded these as divine, according to Mark S. Smith. So today we have covered the origins of Yahwism as we compare the texts of the Canaanites and the texts of the Hebrew Bible. In our next episode, I will look at Yahweh and the Divine Assembly. I appreciate the fact that you took the time to listen through to this presentation, and I hope it has been of some source of intrigue and interest to you. Thank you for listening, and see you on the next episode, sort of speaking.